Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Liars Club. I'm Felicia Michaels.
And I'm Jessica Wellington.
And for you people that are just tuning in for the first time, what we do here at the Liars Club is we have two of our comedy pals come on. We ask them to tell two stories. One is the truth, one is a lie. And then we try to figure out with the people who are playing along who is lying, what story they are lying about. And if you are listening to us on Spotify or on iTunes or Podbean, know that we do stream live Mondays at 4:30 from the Comedy Store's YouTube page and most Fridays at 8:30 also from the Comedy Store's YouTube page. You can also find us on our own YouTube page, The Liars Club, right?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. And please know that this is brought to you by
Blue Apron.
If you ever wanted to try a food delivery service, please try Blue Apron. If you should choose to go look on their site and you're like, wow, this is kind of interesting, and you go all the way through, you pick a packet, you go down to the code box, you put in liars, you'll get 30% off. All right, Jessica, would you please introduce our guest today?
Yeah, I'm super excited to do that. Over here, this gentleman, he is a playwright, filmmaker, director of the documentary The Wild, Wonderful Whites of West Virginia. This is Mr. Julien Nitzberg.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, Julien.
Thank you.
Wow, you know what was so cool is when Jessica put out the flyer today on social media, people were like, oh my God, that's one of my favorite documentaries of all time.
Me included. That actually is one of my favorite
sweet.
documentaries of all time.
Yeah, so welcome to the show. We're
Thank you so
totally
much.
stoked that you're here. Jessica?
Yes, and this other gentleman, you've seen him on Mr. Show, Saturday Night Live, the unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And also, both of these guys I want to mention, new musical, excuse me, For the Love of a Glove, an unauthorized musical fable about the life of Michael Jackson as told by his glove, opened Saturday, January 25th, and this is Jerry Minor.
Woo.
Yay, welcome to the show, Jerry. Jerry, I didn't know you were on SNL. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
2000, 2001.
Yeah, yeah. And what was your favorite memory of SNL?
My favorite.
The day I left.
Yeah, well, I left like right after 9/11, so that probably was my main. But that didn't have anything to do with SNL. It was just the end of my time in New York. Yeah, my favorite memory was probably the first sketch that I did. It was Eminem, and at that point I was a writer, and I wrote this sketch, and the idea was that at some point I might be able to perform on the show. I got hired as a writer, and they had already done my the thing at the opening. They shot that, but there was no time frame on when I would be able to get on the show, and I wrote this sketch. With these two rappers, with Horatio Sands and with Eminem in it, and then he wanted to do it. And actually, he didn't want to do it at first. They sent word to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not doing that." And then we were rehearsing it, and then during the break between the dress rehearsal and the real show, he's like, "I want to be in it." So he got thrown in it, and so that ended up we put it in the show, obviously. And that was my
That's
first
pretty good.
best, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you must have been so stoked. How old were you when you got SNL?
I don't know. I was in my 30s, but
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Didn't mean to trick you into all those dates. There you go.
yeah. I mean, I was maybe late 20s. Yeah, summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably 30 around something.
So now you're starring in the show that Julien wrote and directed, For the Love of the Glove.
Yeah.
And
Told through the glove, which is, I think, is very
told
interesting.
through
Yeah.
the glove. And my question is, how the hell did that come about? How did that initialize itself? How did that come into the world?
Well, there's a long version and a shorter version.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you the long version so I can bore you. But no, originally a network came to me and asked me to write, because I write a lot of biopics for TV. And the first time someone came and said, there's this story we want you to make into a TV movie. It's about someone stole Michael Jackson's glove from the Motown Museum. And I go, okay, what happened? And they go, well, I was gone for a week. MC Hammer offered $100,000 for it, and then it got returned. And I was like, and you want me to fill 2 hours with that? And I go, and I went home and I came up with this thing. I was like, well, here's the thing. The glove is an alien and the government's imprisoned this alien in the Motown Museum. And this guy breaks into the Motown Museum because it's kind of like the Ring in Lord of the Rings. It's just like entrancing him. And one day he breaks in, steals it, and he puts it on, and suddenly he has the musical ability of Michael Jackson and starts walking by elementary schools for some reason. And and they said no. And then about a year later, another network called me and was like, we want you to write the Michael Jackson life story. And I was just like, and you know how these TV movies always suck. And I was like, okay, there's no way to tell Michael Jackson's story properly because it's all too weird. Like, how do you explain the hyperbaric chamber? How do you explain bubbles? And so I started coming up with this idea, and I went to them. I was like, okay, here's the concept. Michael Jackson's glove is an alien who's controlling him and forcing him to do all these bizarre things he doesn't want to do. He's a really sensible person, but he doesn't want to chimp.
Yeah, with all the giraffes and he's very sensible.
Yeah, he doesn't want to have sleepovers with kids. It's all the glove, and they laughed. They're really hard. Said that's the best pitch we've ever heard, and they said, "Can you do the normal version?" And I was like, "No, it's gonna suck, and it's morally repugnant if we don't deal with like the heavier issues of Michael's life." And it kind of festered in my mind, and then I was just like, I did this musical called The Beastly Bombing here that ran for a year, and after that I was like, maybe I should do the Michael Jackson story as a musical with all original music, puppets, and so now it deals very much with him being raised Jehovah's Witness, which Jerry was raised Jehovah's Witness.
Well, that's when I was looking you guys up earlier. I mean, I'd known like general things about the two of you. I didn't know that you were Jehovah's Witness. Is it such an odd thing to work in a project where is this being addressed in For the Love of the Glove?
Yeah, I mean, it's odd is probably not the wrong word, but like not usual, because people just don't know that much about them. They don't talk about them that much.
So you still are practicing?
No. No. If anybody wants to know my story, that Leah Remini does the Scientology show, and they did a special on the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm in that one.
Okay.
He practiced it. He doesn't need to practice anymore.
There you go.
Yeah, so
if the glove is an alien, are you going to do a spoof of like maybe the glove is actually also the hamburger helper?
They could have like a giant battle where the hamburger helper and fight. Yeah.
That's hilarious, Jessica.
And it was funny. So when I was starting to research this, Jehovah's Witness, what they believe became a big part of the story, and I'm doing all this research, and this documentary about Jehovah's Witnesses is playing, and I don't know how I saw it, but it said they were having a screening, and it was like hosted by Jerry Minor, and I'd been seeing Jerry perform for years and loving, thinking he's a genius comic.
Oh, thanks.
And I was like, wait, why is Jerry Minor involved with this? And I went to the screening. It was at the Royal somewhere on the West Side.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there was Jerry on stage, and it's all these people talking through their trauma of being raised in this religion, and I was like, well, I've seen Jerry be funny. And I started like checking out him sing. I was like, he can sing too, and then I started stalking him and showing up at his house every day with like chocolates and flowers till he agreed to be in the show.
Yeah, did you mention the show was a musical?
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
we did.
Okay.
With puppets.
Yeah,
and
with
Jerry
puppets.
is Thrilla, Michael's glove. So
You're the glove.
Yeah.
he's the glove. Yeah.
So I know it's having a run here in Los Angeles. Will you give the information for that so that people know about that? It's starting on Saturday, January 25th.
It starts Saturday.
Downtown.
It's in Echo Park. It's if you guys ever went to the Steve Allen Theater, CFI, Center for Inquiry, had the Steve Allen Theater. They moved to a new location in Echo Park.
Okay.
And they have a new theater called the Carl Sagan and Andrewian Theater. And you do your podcast from there, right? Or you've done it from there?
No, that was actually there to see. I did a CFI podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I did another like Scientology kind of thing there.
Now, forgive me. I'm not smart. Okay.
Don't say that.
Neither are we. Don't worry.
Don't say that, but it's true.
What is the Jodronini would mean for?
What?
Why did he say?
Okay, I'll say it slowly. It's Andrewian was Carl Sagan's wife, his widow, wife, and producer. So she produced all the Cosmos TV series originally with Carl Sagan. She's a writer also, and she produced all the later episodes of Cosmos. And so when they decided to name the theater, Carl Sagan was one of the founders of Center for Inquiry. So they decided to honor Carl and his wife because they were actually, so it's one of those things where the wife kind of disappears and the man becomes a celeb, but they were equal partners in creating this legacy. So
And what was her name again?
Androgyny.
Well, that's
No, because this is how we do our team. She says, I'm stupid. I'm like, no, you're not. But yeah. And then you tell us the answer, and I'm all like, so I can figure it out, too.
What was that again?
her first name is Ann, A-N-N, and last name is Druen,
Okay.
D-R-U.
Oh, that makes way more sense now.
Y-N.
No, because the way you said it did sound like
thank
it
you.
was like some kind
One
of
name,
space.
Yeah. So if you go to our website, you can find tickets for theloveofglove.com.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, good. I had one more question. I know you did the documentary that is also one of Austin's favorite documentaries, the Wonderful World of
The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And and then I saw on YouTube that you did like a second part. Is that so? Or who did you, like you? I read on YouTube that number one, you were working on another documentary when you met the Whites, right?
I was doing a documentary on a rockabilly singer named Hassel Atkins, who. When we get to the lying part, every project I do sounds like I made it up and is ridiculous.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So The Wild and Wonderful Whites is about a multi-generational criminal family who are also tap dancers. And
Wait, Jess,
I'm surprised Jessica doesn't know these people.
You haven't seen that shit, Jess? You got to watch it immediately.
I
Have
have
to.
not.
It's my favorite thing on the planet.
It's so good.
It's amazing.
I was so obsessed with it in high school, and I was in charge of our TV production thing, that I tried to get a hold of Mamie White, who's like now kind of the matriarch of the family. And I learned very quickly that they weren't going to do anything in front of the camera for free, but I did get to speak to them at one point.
Yeah.
So I met the Whites when I was doing a documentary on this guy named Hassel Atkins, who basically in 1956, I like to say in 1956, when rock and roll was being born, Hassel Atkins was already trying to kill it. And he was basically doing punk rock in 1956. All his songs were about cutting people's heads off and played through the craziest fuzz box you've ever heard. And he was so hard to get along with that he had to become a one-man band. And but basically, 1976 arrives, punk rock happens, and all these people start discovering his singles, and bands like the Cramps and stuff start covering him. And this guy who's living literally in a tar paper shack with no telephone in West Virginia starts getting letters from all over the world being like, I heard your single, I'm in a punk rock band in London, and loving him. And so I did a documentary on him, and while making it, one week while I was shooting it, Mamie White was there and her mom, the Miracle Woman. And every time I'd set up a perfect shot of Hassel playing, she would jump in front of the camera and just yell, I'm on acid, woo! And ruin the shot.
Yeah, I think that's my aunt.
And then a week later, I went back to shoot more with Hassel, and he'd quit the Roadhouse he was playing at because he was sure they were ripping him off, even though literally 20 people would come to his shows every week. So he could figure out, okay, 20 people times $5 cover. I know how much I should be getting. And Mamie White pulls up in this pickup truck and says, you're the movie people, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. She goes, come here, I want to tell you something. And I was like, what? She goes, come closer. I'm like, what, Mamie? And she goes, I'm on acid again. Woo! And then she said, it's my birthday this weekend. I want you to come because I'm going to have a cake and it's going to have tits and a pussy on it. And I was like, I'm an all-American boy and I love cake and I'll be there.
Okay. Well, there you go.
That's how I met them. So.
Well, wonderful. And once again, thank you so much for doing the podcast. And thank you for everyone that's playing along. And let's jump into it. And why don't we start with Jerry? So what we'll do is you tell two stories. One is the truth. One is a lie. They both can't be the truth. And afterwards, you're like, oh, I lied. They're both the truth. So they definitely have to be the truth and a lie.
Yeah, I'll kill you.
Yeah, she gets very upset. And then we'll rotate it around. So you'll tell a story, then Julien, and then you, and then Julien. So go ahead.
Well, I thought since it's Martin Luther King Day, I'd give a tribute by. Oh, and by the way, if you historical roast, we were talking about that. I'm Martin Luther King in the historical roast on Netflix. So
Oh,
I want to
nice.
commemorate the day by going and watching something like that. And,
Something insulting his legacy.
But I thought I'd talk about my brushes with the police. So I guess. We tell both stories on top of each other? Or
No. You're
does
going to
one
tell
right now?
one, and then Julien, and then you. Yeah. We'll rotate.
So I was I lived in Chicago for a while. I was involved in the Second City, and so there I met a lot of my friends and people who are working now, like Tina Fey and Horatio Sands and Adam McKay, who's the director. And this is actually was a show that Adam had put together. This is the early days of Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of stuff with them when I first moved to Chicago. And at first it was just a few members, just like 5 guys, and this was before the ladies came in. And we used to, and that's when it got good, because at this point we were just doing like just crazy shows, a lot at the Improv Olympic in Chicago.
Yeah, I went to IO here.
Oh, okay.
It's all gone now.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, too bad.
I know.
But I guess there's other places to go to, right? I guess just want to see improv.
This is where, as a stand-up, I'm being polite in that you guys talk about improv.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I really liked IO.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
It was a nice venue. It was nice in a nice neighborhood too, or neighborhood, but
Yeah.
We got shot at there when I was working there. But yeah.
oh man. Well, I mean, it's like
During the show?
I shouldn't say nice.
No, it was after the show. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I should say it's a nice place to go because there was a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of Hollywood. But this was in Chicago at the old IO, and we were doing a show. Actually, we weren't doing the show at the IO. We were doing it at a club right down the street on Clark Avenue. And this has to do with the story. But at the time, and I don't remember, Adam had written this sketch that was called "Kill Dan Rostenkowski." And at that point, Dan Rostenkowski was like he was a representative from Illinois. He was like the House and Ways Committee leader or something like that, and it was a tax
Yeah,
thing.
no, that's true though. It was like a big bull of a guy. Was it like?
This big guy, and why we wanted to kill him? It was a joke anyway. It was like a big, a joke. But the idea was that at some point I was gonna lead everybody out of the theater and into the street. This Dan Rostenkowski, and getting everybody to chant Dan Rostenkowski. And when I get everybody out, and this is the first time we'd ever done it.
What a chant, though. Dan Rostenkowski.
Kill
him.
That's
not a,
kill him.
Kill a elected
not a good
representative.
chant name, though. It's not a good chant name.
I know. That's part of it, too. Like, kill Dan Rostenkowski. Can you say that? Can you get the audience going, kill Dan Rostenkowski. Get him, Rick, really charged up. And I was supposed to lead him outside. And we had somebody videotaping us outside because we were going to stop traffic, which is a big no-no. At any point in time. I don't even think we were out there 2 minutes before.
But you were going to be the first guy to walk out in traffic?
I led the crowd out of the theater into the street.
How big was the crowd?
50 people.
Okay.
How big was the street? Was it a very busy?
Clark Avenue. So this is like right across the street from Wrigley Field.
Oh.
So it's
wow.
right on that block. Actually,
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the bars that are around there are like people coming from Wrigley and stuff like that. And there are just cops right there. They're always looking for stuff like that because trouble always happens. So I don't even think we were out there 2 minutes before the cops show up.
Right.
And I run. I don't know what I was doing. I was so charged up with like, I'm gonna do this, and we're gonna go out in the street, and we're gonna cause a scene, and we knew we were gonna cause a scene or whatever. But I had no idea that like the cops would show up that quickly. So I'm just like, just keep going with the bit. So I run from the cops. They chase me. They chase me down Clark Street. There's a club.
Were there many other black people in the improv group?
No.
I know. You fucking knew the answer before you even asked that, Jessica.
Yeah, this is the first thing. No, there weren't.
So
and
it's
I
like you're the head of the SLA at this point.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking about being black. I was just thinking like, we're doing this bit, and they'll get it.
Yeah.
And so if I do this, if I cause a scene and now I run, then they'll like even we'll
cops have a great sense of humor about killing.
I ran into this club called the Metro, which is a dance club, and went inside, and the cops now they're pissed. And they're like, where is he? And they're like looking for me, and there's people in the club. So they get me, they pull me out of the dance club, and they're pissed. And now I'm going to jail because I'm thinking like, they're just gonna go like get out of the street, and they're like, no, you're going to jail.
Yeah, you ran.
And so I'm like, somebody bail me out, like come to this jail. And everybody is like just looking on the street because everybody's like followed us after I ran. They're just standing there, and they put me in the car. And we did have a friend with a video car, so there's a video tape of the incident. And I went to jail. They bailed me out right away. But
Who bailed you out?
By the rest of our crew.
Yeah.
I was just at a cast. We were running a cast. So Matt Walsh, who was a part of Upright Citizens Brigade, and Adam got together with a bunch of our friends and got and bailed me out.
Huh.
So I got out within hours in that one.
Right.
On that one. How many other times?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Did you volunteer to do this, or did they ask for people to volunteer?
You mean to do the Dan Rouse and It was a part of a sketch that we were
Yeah, but to take the crowd out into the street.
Yeah, you
Did
were the one guy
volunteer
in the cast to do it.
I don't know if it was much of a volunteer as it was like that was my part in the show. I mean,
they were just like, okay, and Jerry, you're gonna lead him out.
Yeah, it was more like that. It was, but I wasn't like, I never thought that we would get in trouble. I thought that maybe if somebody showed up, they would be like, get out of the street, and we get out of the street. But I didn't.
And so why did you run? You thought you were still in the sketch?
It's just charged up. Yeah, I was just like into the sketch. I thought it would be funny. We used to do a lot of stuff like that.
You didn't have one concern of I better not run.
I know in Chicago.
In Chicago, out of all places, back in the day.
There was a ton of people watching.
No,
I thought it was gonna be funny, and at that point, being funny was the most.
How old were you at this point?
Important thing. Mid-20s.
Yeah. All right.
That's interesting.
That's a good first story because we are a podcast, but we're a game, so it's competitive.
Right?
And so you're taking the heat. You're answering the questions. So we're going to move it along. I wanted to let you know, Julien, that you might be off camera when you're leaning that way. You kind of have to sit.
Everybody online wants to let you know that they are very happy with the back of your head, but they
Is anybody saying anything about Jerry's story?
Right off the bat, Jason Marino said this guy already looks like a good liar, and him and Mark Melvin, they kind of doubled down on that throughout the conversation, and they're already both going first story a lie for Jerry. Now, who knows? Second story might change their opinion, but
it does seem unbelievable that you would run. That seems,
I don't know. It feels heat of the moment, not super ridiculous. It's just that it seems to crumble at the end there. It seems like a real story that maybe that he wasn't exactly sure. It's like he thought about how he might explain the end, but he hadn't really rehearsed the wording. So when you're like...
Yeah, because you don't know what those cops thought. I mean, were you so in the middle of the improv sketch that you didn't have a moment to think these guys just came on the scene, they don't know what's going on? Not even that much that you're so committed to the improv sketch?
What's going to take this to the next step is me doing something crazier.
Yeah.
What time of day was it?
It was night.
Oh, it was nighttime.
Oh, at night,
that seems worse. Weren't you imagining it during the day? It seems more high stakes.
I did think it was at day for some reason.
Yeah. I did think it was day for some reason as well, but then he said it right into the club. So and then he said there was people in there that.
And doing the show too.
Yeah.
I don't know many comedy shows that happen.
But sometimes you
improv,
think
you never know.
Yeah, that's true. With improv, it could be during the day. You never know. You never know. All right, so we'll move on to your story, Julien.
All right, so I figured all my projects sound ridiculous. So, I've interviewed the Unabomber. I've, Wild and Wonderful Whites, obviously. For the Love of a Glove sounds ridiculous. So I thought
you interviewed the Unabomber?
I did, yeah. For
Ted Kaczynski?
Mr. Ted Kaczynski,
Yeah. What is the one thing that you could tell us about Ted Kaczynski that we wouldn't have picked up on the TV? Is there one personal or a small detail?
I would just like him to drop a name like Joe Smith.
Ted Kaczynski.
You know what I mean?
He has impeccable handwriting. Is that helpful?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
We all saw that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, basically, Ted Kaczynski had always refused to do any interviews, and and I think Smoking Gun had all the letters to him, like from Barbara Walters and stuff, being like, "I'd like to interview you," and he kept saying no, 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 and his magazine suggested I try and interview him, and I was just like, okay, how am I going to get him to write, to do an interview? I'm like, he's not going to do an in-person interview, and I was like, because he's a weird loner. I was like, but what does he love? Letters. It's like he loves writing people's letters.
Yeah.
And he's a mathematician. And I was like, mathematicians love solving problems. And like, I thought there's a famous story that like when Mozart wouldn't get out of bed and his dad would do an unfinished chord, like he would just play bonk and Mozart would just have to run down and go bomb to finish the chord. And is that the correct term? But anyway, something like that. But I was like, if I write Ted with all these questions that are good questions, he'll just be like, God damn it, I got to answer it. So I wrote him this long letter and with all these questions, and not like cheesy Barbara Walters questions, but like questions about technology and the end of the world and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And
sending him a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. And then the answers started coming back. And then we just started a correspondence. And then 9/11 happened. And I got him to write to me telling me like what he thought of 9/11 and what he thought was wrong with their strategy.
Oh.
He was like, you don't blow up innocent people. You blow up powerful people so that when they react, it looks like they're protecting themselves, not attack innocent people. Then everyone sides with the government and stuff. So.
And did that get published?
So after 9/11, no one would publish it. Everyone was too scared to publish it, including like, it was really weird. Like McSweeney's was like, we'll publish it. And then suddenly, like after announcing it, they like bumped us. And they were like, oh, we have this interview with Robin Williams. We really have to run instead. And I was like, seriously? So it ended up being in a book. But yeah. So,
well, okay.
But everyone was, so.
Well, when you throw that out, a person has to ask, what is
No,
that?
Yeah.
All right. So go to your story.
Jason Marino said a lie on that, by the way.
So now here's my story. So
Okay.
they're all things I've worked on that I hope won't be easily researchable online. So because they didn't happen. Because when you're making documentaries or articles, you pitch a lot of stuff that never happens. So the first project is a weird project that I pitched to a TV network, and basically I read the story because I read a lot of weird sources, and it was about a KKK leader in East Texas, and somehow his KKK troop found out that he had a black girlfriend, and he'd had her secret for a few years, and they were like, well, we're just not cool with that.
Were they that smooth and easygoing about it? We're just not cool with this, dude. You're going to have to leave.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with a formerly prestigious network that was trying to do reality shows, and as often happens, and they were like, what do you got? Because they knew my documentaries, and I was like, I'm obsessed with this story. And I was like, it's funny, and they were like, okay, you can do it. And then suddenly I was like, oh, I hadn't researched or anything. So I tried to find the guy, and the guy disappeared. So now, like, they're wanting to do the show, and I'm like, fuck. And we start doing research, and we find this other guy, and his name's Steve, and he was an Aryan Brotherhood member, and he was had been in jail for 10 years, and
I played a skinhead on Court TV.
and and we found him writing a letter to some blog, some blog site, and basically he went to prison, and he's from Oklahoma, but they sent him to prison in Louisiana, and his dad was super racist. And he got into prison. He just joined the Aryan Brotherhood for protection and got really into it and rose up to being a lieutenant, and he was. And okay, I'll tell you. I'll get to the good part. So then, eventually, he becomes his own lawyer in court, like a jailhouse lawyer. Gets really good and is able to overturn his sentence after 8 years. He gets out and he starts dating, and immediately he starts finding he's really attracted to black women, and he goes and he meets this woman in a park because he lives in a small town in Oklahoma, and he falls for her, and he has to tell her on the first date, just so you know, I've got some tattoos that you might not like, but I really regret what I did, and I'm just fiendishly attracted to black women. And
yeah, but he could have said you. That makes that not as special.
You're
talking to that person, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and he starts going to a black church, and he starts talking about how he really regrets what he did, and the Aryan Brotherhood, and his whole family's super racist, and it's of course the funniest when I went down to film with him and his girlfriend, it was really great because every stereotype was reversed. Like all the white people were on welfare and just selling drugs, and all the black people worked hard and were seriously great people, and his cousin was still like a big Aryan Brotherhood member. So and we had to go interview him, and his name was Mad Dog, and we go in with
2020.
And we go in with all our crew, and of course Steve, our Starvid, we've already given him his lav and everything is on him, and we go in there, and we're about to shoot with Mad Dog, and suddenly his mic is live, and I'm sitting inside in their trailer, in the backwoods of Oklahoma where they raise fighting dogs, and it's just like fucking
I
crazy.
come from that kind of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and and suddenly my cameraman, who's like setting up the cameras and is doing the sound, goes, "You guys have to handle this." And it's like, "What's going on?" He goes, "They're planning to kill you right now." Steve's mic is on, and I'm listening to his conversation with Mad Dog.
They're planning to fucking kill you?
He found the lavalier that we put on Steve because we were just filming him driving around and everything, and they thought he was wearing a wire, and that we're FBI, and this guy's a meth dealer also, and we're just like, fuck. And I'm the director, so I was just like, to Paul, my producer, I'm like, "Paul, you go handle this."
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus.
And the craziest thing is, Paul, I don't know why, but he'd brought weed with him from California because it had just gotten legal, and it was medical. It wasn't legal. It was medical. And he goes out and he talks to Mad Dog, and goes, "If I was FBI, would I have this weed on me?" And he goes, "Let's smoke it so I can see if you're really FBI." And he smoked Mad Dog out. Mad Dog
did a couple of lines, went to the strip club, really settled things, you know what I mean?
Mad Dog comes back inside, and I've flown. We only have like 2 or 3 days to shoot this, and Mad Dog is so stoned I can't get an interview out of him because he's so fucked up. And then we do this really shitty interview, and then he goes, off camera, he goes, "Now, Julien, I got a question for you." And I'm like, "Yeah, what?" He goes, "Where are your people from?" And I was like, "New York?" He goes, No,
your people.
Before that. And I go, before that, I go, Austria, Hungary, and Poland. He goes, "You're a Jew, aren't you?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Look at the nose." Like, this is the nose that like anti-Semitic literature has featured for hundreds of years. And he goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "Where do you have your family in the Holocaust?" I go, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, my grandmother's family all got killed." He goes, "Oh, I'm amazed. I'm so excited." He goes, "I've never really hung out with a Jew before." He goes, "Can I ask you questions?" He's like, and then he yells to his wife.
Just wanted your gold.
Yeah. He yells to his wife. He's like, "Honey, Julian's a Jew. Come in here." And he's like, "Can we get a picture with you?" And I was like, "Do you want to feel for the horns first?" And anyway, long story short, we end up having a great time hanging out with them. We leave. We shoot the rest of the sizzle reel, take it back to the network. The network says, "Julien, this isn't funny." And I was like, "What do you mean it's not funny?" Because it started with him being like, "I was a member of the Aryan Brotherhood."
And you hanging out with a Jew at the end.
And there was a death warrant on my head.
Yeah.
Because I fell in love with a black woman, had a kid, and they were like, "Can you make it funnier?" And we're like, "But it's not funny." And they were like, "You said it would be funny." I was like, "It's funnily ironic when an Aryan Brotherhood guy falls off." And they, of course, then told the producers to make this really dramatic, fascinating story funny. They added the worst comedy music.
Oh God.
And then we never had a show.
Wow.
So,
Huh.
oh, and one more thing.
Yeah.
Just to
Okay.
give you a little more extra dumb TV. Breaking Bad was very successful there. And they were like, "We want breaking in the title." And we're like, "How?" And they were like, "Just put in the title." And the producers were like, "It's going to be called Breaking Clan." And I was like, "But he's not in the Klan."
Yeah, but he broke from the Klan. Makes
No,
sense.
he left.
No,
left
Aryan. Yeah.
Aryan Brotherhood.
Oh.
Aryan
The
Brotherhood.
other guy was in the club.
Shit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the breaking,
What about
Aryan
Breaking Brotherhood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Breaking Brotherhood.
That is
That'd be good, but nobody.
That's a huge story and a lot to unpack. So, is anyone saying anything online, Austin?
Mark Melvin says, "Never heard a liar on here like this, motherfucker."
Right?
And everybody
Right?
else seems to be in concurrence with
And
that.
the whole
so,
and another thing.
yeah. Jason Marino said, "Whoa, slow down on the details, man." So might be giving yourself away. I don't know.
That is a crazy story, though. That is a crazy story.
I mean, I could get it because you guys know I
Right.
didn't know a lot of Jewish people at all before
never-
coming to Hollywood.
And where'd you grow up?
Me either.
In North Carolina and Florida.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I grew up in Michigan.
I
Yeah.
never met
And-
one until college.
Yeah.
I'm from
yeah.
Seattle.
Yeah.
There. Does everyone got that off of them now? Are we all okay
Let's
now?
all
Fuck.
meet your first Jew.
Jesus Christ.
Come take a picture with me. Hey, Mom, I met a Jew. Oh, they became my Facebook friend too.
Oh, okay.
And they like write to me on
Are you
Facebook.
currently Facebook friends now?
I'm friends with Steve and Mad Dog's wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wife?
Yeah.
Their wives?
Mad Dog's wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mrs. Mad Dog.
Yeah.
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 All right. All right. What do you think, Michael? You think this whole thing is a lie?
I mean, it's super endearing there by the end. I like how everyone became friends. I
Yeah,
like
it's a
how
little
lot of
too
things were
tidy. It's a
solved.
little too
Yeah,
tidy,
it's
right?
pretty clean. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. It's one of those ones where I'll be kind of upset if it's not because I like this whole Mad Dog situation. I like how that guy was in the Aryan Brotherhood and then he ends
Right.
up digging black culture and
Yeah.
black chicks and Jews even by the end there, huh?
But I do believe the part where the network said, "Can you make this funnier?" I do believe that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part. Right.
Do they really think that just jamming the word breaking into another title would just make it another Vince Gilligan style hit? You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
seems kind of crazy to be like, just put breaking in the title.
Yeah. And the Aryan Brotherhood guy said, listen, seriously, all the guys in the Aryan Brotherhood, they're really into black porn. Like, when it comes down to, it's all,
I'm not
what's
even.
most, like, forbidden is the hottest. And it's just, like, total sexual repression leads
It's
to
true.
racism.
I'm not
So-
even exaggerating. My dad was an alcoholic, and I always liked black guys since I was 11.
Yeah.
And I got my ass whooped. I don't know how many times.
Uh-huh.
So it's real.
So now when she fucks black guys, she wants a whooping. I mean, if we're gonna go there, let's go there. Okay, let's move on to your
Look at
second
Jerry.
story,
Look
Jerry.
Explains a lot of my life.
Now you get right.
Jerry's been married to 2 different former Aryan Brotherhood sisters.
All right, so let's hear your second story, Jerry.
Another brush with the cops. One night, this is Los Angeles, and this is early 2000s. I was driving home from a hockey game, actually, from a Los Angeles Kings game. I don't remember who they were playing. But on my way home, I started to get followed by a cop car, and notice it. And so I start to turn into...
What kind of car was it?
It was a Kia. Kia.
It was a
Sorrento?
Kia.
Sorrento's the. Sorrento's the.
I have a Kia Niro.
It's gonna make sense though.
Okay. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
Look at that. I remember it being a Kia, a red Kia. So as I'm driving, I notice the cop is following me, and so I start to turn into places that I don't know because I'm like, is this cop following me? So I just like make the first turn, the cop's still behind me. Make the second turn, cop's still behind me. Now I'm in a neighborhood where I don't know where I'm at and I don't know where I'm going. But the cop is following me, and then it seems like there's another cop behind him, and then another cop behind him, and then I get to a place where it's a dead end. It's kind of a circle drive. You know, so I go up in the drive. It's a dead end. I get to the end of the drive. There's a helicopter.
You mean like a cul-de-sac?
Cul-de-sac.
Okay,
Exactly.
okay.
It's like,
Ooh, French.
Yeah.
so now I'm in this cul-de-sac, and as I turn around on the curve, I can see that there is a line. I can't even tell how many cops there is. And then there's the helicopter, and it starts shining the light. And when that light shines, it's like blinding. It's like daytime.
Mhm.
And then they do the whole put your hands out of the car. And the cars are all on the other side of the cul-de-sac. They're all lined up, and I can't see the cops. All I know is there's a line of cops, but I can't really see what's going on. And they do the whole like put your hands out of the car, and I'm like, whoa, because I'm used to just like you get pulled over, they take your license. Like this is serious. So I do the whole thing. I have to get out on the ground, do the whole belly rub,
Belly rub.
Yeah, show me your hands, but also like, crawl on the ground. How do I do that? And they rush over, put me in handcuffs, tell me that the car is stolen, and it is a rental car. And that's one of the reasons why I can't remember which model it is.
Mm. What was the rental company?
Yeah, that's $1, fucking $1. Yeah, because I used to remember never go to that place again. Was it $1? Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's really bad. If it's gonna be bad if I don't get the rental company right.
Maybe was it $1?
You're such a good actor.
Well,
and I hope this is acting.
And also, I don't want to put down. I don't want to put down a rental company if it wasn't them.
Right.
But this was
It's so
almost 20
weird
this
to
was
me
almost 20
that
years
your
ago.
first story is all like, I was in a sketch and I took all the people out into the streets and the cops were like, hey, and I was like, fuck y'all, and I just ran because I was in the middle of a sketch. And then the second story is like, I'm just driving down the street and there's a Kia behind me. I know it's a cop. Like, it just seems so weird to me that it's complete opposites.
I was out when he said he went to a hockey game. This one started fishing.
Well, the reason I was saying that was because I was downtown.
Right.
I was at Staples
That's why
Center.
you were saying it, or were you saying it because you were there?
I was at Staples Center, and when I was coming back, I didn't know where I was because I was going in these places downtown. I was in a neighborhood I wasn't familiar with, and I ended up on a cul-de-sac.
So a cop was in a Kia though.
No,
I
was
was
in
in
a
a
Kia.
Kia.
I understood like a cop was in a Kia.
No,
But let me ask you this: you said early 2000s. Define early 2000s. What year?
Well, it was after 9/11, so
That's
it's probably
how you judge
2002,
everything.
Yeah.
2003, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And that was one of the reasons because I thought there's no reason I should be getting arrested just because I have a rental car, and the cops are like, no, yeah, this car's been reported stolen. And I'm like, well, I have an agreement. There's an agreement in the car. So I'm thinking I'm not going to jail. And they're like, helicopter. You see all these cars out here? I mean, we had shotguns.
We got to justify.
You going to jail. So they took me to Rampart Division, which I didn't know anything about that, but I go in the holding cell and I'm like, I won't be here long. This will be cleared up. They'll see the rental agreement. They'll know that I actually, rented the car. And they're like, no, the rental company called this car in stolen.
The rental company did it
Yeah,
to you?
and I'm like, I've been it's my credit card. Like there's no way they should be they have my credit card. There's no way this should be reported stolen. I'm like, well, you figure it out. And then the cops are like, don't worry about it. This is Friday. The judge will see you Monday. I'm like, what?
Fuck you,
What?
dude.
What? No,
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay in jail for the weekend. And I'm like, yeah. So they take me to Rampart. I get in the lockup at Rampart, and I get locked up with two dudes come in, and one dude has tattoos on his eyeballs.
They say mad and dog.
They're tattooed eyes on his eyeballs. I said eyeballs, on his eyelids.
Eyelids, yeah.
So he was laying down in the cell, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with him? And then he opened his eyes. I'm like, oh, that's a picture on his eyelids. But crazy face tats. And I didn't know anything about MS-13, but it was probably that gang then. But yeah, they had me in lockup with them, and I could. There was a phone in the lockup, so I could call, and they end up calling. And people should know this. You can't call a cell phone from jail. You can only call, at least then, you can only call landline. So I couldn't call my girlfriend to come and bail me out. Nobody knew that I'd been arrested. Nobody knew, where I was. So I had to call my dad and tell him, hey, you got to call my girlfriend because my dad has a landline, and my girlfriend didn't have a landline. You got to call her and tell her to get me bailed out.
So how many calls were you allowed to make?
As many as you want. There's a phone inside the
Okay.
in the
I will
holding
say,
cell.
I still had a landline in 02 and 03.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I did not, but it didn't matter because I couldn't call home. I called my girlfriend who I didn't live with, and she just had a cell phone. So I call my dad, and my dad calls the police station to find out what the charges were and all that stuff to tell her what if I could bail, and they say that I was being held on a gun charge, a stolen gun. And what later happened is the charge, whatever the number is for a stolen gun and stolen car is
Uh-huh.
very similar. So they're like, well, he's on a gun charge, so he's probably not going to be able to get bail. So I don't know what you're going to do. So my dad's like, and so I call him back. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, you're on a gun charge. I don't know. He's like, did you have a gun? I'm like, no, I didn't have a fucking gun. Anyway, I finally got bailed out. Got out the next morning. I did not stay in Rampart. I had to go to the Twin Towers downtown. Stayed there all night. Woke up in the morning. Got there in the middle of the night. Woke up at just found a bunk. I'm like, all right, I was just laying in this bunk. Woke up and I saw nothing but people like speaking Spanish around me, and I'm like, I think I might be on the wrong side of the jail side. So I went over to the other side, and they all laughed at me. And I heard somebody saying Spanish, like, I think he thinks he's Puerto Rican or something. Yeah.
What'd you say about the Twin Towers?
I had to go to the Twin Towers
that night. Stay the night.
Good thing it was
So I
after
got transferred
9/11.
from Rampart, which I was just in the lockup at the station.
The first thing you said was it was here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the Twin
the
Towers
Towers
is a
is-
jail.
It's
Oh, I
downtown.
thought you meant the World Trade
No,
Center.
no,
Oh,
no,
no.
it's a
Oh,
jail. Yeah.
Those Twin Towers are gone, long gone. If you want to
Yeah.
be familiar with Twin Towers
Yeah.
now, the ones that are here, that's
Gotcha.
Well, that is
Good thing you don't know.
that's a pretty big story. Interesting. I don't know. Like the first story didn't have a lot of details, and then this story is very detail heavy.
Yeah, with the gun charge, the numbers
Yeah,
being different,
yeah.
and his dad landline.
I think it's because
Yeah.
it's
one
true.
was 30 years ago and one was 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
and that you didn't have a landline. That's kind of weird because everyone had landlines back in 2002. Yeah, that's odd. Because
I know. I did. I didn't.
Yeah.
Even, yeah, I didn't. I don't think. I
What do
heard
you think,
something.
Julien? You're allowed to ask questions too.
I actually know which one's true and what's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can already figure it out.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna move it along unless someone said something online.
Not really, other than Mark has actually switched his vote since he was the
Uh-huh.
one that immediately thought you were lying right off the bat. You've changed his opinion on the story. He thinks this is a lie now. Ken Lofgren is chiming in. He agrees with him that this one's a lie.
That this
Jason
one is
Marino,
a lie.
other way, he thinks it's true.
Yeah.
And I think Michael was with Marino.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think this one is the lie?
No, I think this one is true.
You do.
Yeah, it just felt.
Felt real.
It did.
I mean, you feel like that
real.
would happen too.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
there was some concern in his. I mean, I felt like he was kind of reliving it a little
Right.
bit.
That's true. That's true.
I tend to get punked on this shit though, and all the time though. Huh?
Yeah.
So
No, but I kind of just don't want to believe that you were in an improv sketch group and that you ran away from the police in the middle of a sketch.
So,
I don't
which
wanna
one would
believe
have
that.
happened first? The
improv-
sketch or
the
the
Gazarowski happened a
Yeah.
long time
the?
before. That
Can you spell his last name?
ROSTINKOW
Rostenkowski?
SKI.
Okay.
wait, so the improv one happened first?
Mhm.
Oh, I could believe then by 10 years later you'd been hanging around white people long enough to go to a hockey game at that point. Yeah, that makes sense to me now.
Yeah, but hockey game in LA.
I grew up playing hockey. I
I
grew up
want
in
to go
Michigan.
to a
so,
hockey
yeah.
game.
Oh, okay, that makes
Yeah.
some sense.
All right, your turn, Julien.
Okay, so this is another project I worked on. So I lived in West Virginia years ago when I was making.
Why?
I was.
Oh,
First, I lived in Eastern Kentucky because I was doing the documentary on Hassel Atkins. Then I moved to West Virginia to work on The Dancing Outlaw, a documentary I worked on, which was the first documentary
The
with Jessica
PBS?
White. Yeah. So I worked at the PBS station in West Virginia, in Morgantown, West Virginia, close to Pittsburgh. And while I was there, I worked on lots of documentaries and a trauma film called Strangest Dreams: Invasion of the Space Preachers, which is about these preachers who moved to West Virginia. These aliens, actually, I didn't think about this till now, moved to West Virginia to try and take over West Virginia and disguised themselves as radio preachers. And so we were always researching different documentaries, especially people from West Virginia. So we ended up researching this fascinating guy named Carl Hess. And Carl Hess was Barry Goldwater's speechwriter. And he wrote the famous Barry Goldwater speech, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, moderation in the defense of liberties. Oh, no, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, moderation in the
Can you explain to Jessica who Barry Goldwater is?
yes, thank you very much.
Barry Goldwater was this famous conservative Republican senator from Arizona, And in '64, he ran against LBJ for president. And the Republican Party back then wasn't an extreme right-wing nut party. But Barry Goldwater seized the nomination and got slaughtered by LBJ. I think he won 1 or 2 states. And after that, everyone said Republican conservatives is an idiotic choice to make, and no one's going to ever win as a Republican conservative again.
Oh, wow.
And but he
proved them wrong.
Yeah. And but he was more of the libertarian wing of the party. So but he supported, because he was a libertarian, he was like against the civil rights bill, because he said the federal government shouldn't be able to tell the state governments what laws to pass, because so basically he said, from what I understand, he wasn't a racist, but he was just like someone who's just like, this is it. The federal government should only do war and this, and the state government should do everything. So we can't tell the state governments you can't discriminate against people. And because of that, lots of racists started joining the Republican Party. And he later distanced himself from Reagan, and he didn't like Christian evangelicals. So Carl Hess was living in West Virginia, and he was this guy who'd been Barry Goldwater's speechwriter, kind of an architect of conservatism. And in the late 60s, he started having a break, and he became anti-war. He started riding a motorcycle, grew his hair long, and he became such a libertarian that he refused to carry money and ended up living in West Virginia in kind of a commune where he owned nothing and only believed in trading stuff. And so we started researching a documentary on him. And in his circle was this other guy named Ben Daughtry. And Ben was also like a much younger Republican who didn't leave the party in the 70s, but he stayed. Like Carl Hess was kind of this libertarian philosopher, and he stayed in the party. And when Reagan got elected, he was in the Reagan camp working for Reagan, writing speeches. And he actually wrote the morning, what's it called? Not the morning after. No.
The nuclear war thing?
No, the Reagan slogan.
The ad.
Yeah, the ad.
Yeah,
Morning in America.
Morning in America. Yeah.
Sorry,
you guys study together?
So
we got our lives together.
Just so we're a little more compact. So far, you're doing the documentary on the Hess guy who's a libertarian.
Yeah. So the Carl Hess documentary falls apart as
Okay.
most stuff falls apart. So then I meet this guy Ben Daughtry, and years later is when he comes back. I'm giving you a lot of setup.
Yeah.
So I meet him because we're researching Carl Hess, and I start being fascinated by him because he's super hilarious, super weird, and he's just got this crazy life, and I kind of keep in touch with him, and because let me get to the crazy stuff. We're talking to him about Carl Hess, and then I start finding out about his life, and he gets into the Reagan White House. He writes Morning in America speech, and he also has always been an aspiring musician like everybody, and he ends up writing Reagan's theme song that becomes very popular. That's called Morning in America. And he gets into the Reagan White House, and his dad was a preacher, so he was very Christian, but kind of more still libertarian. And then suddenly he starts seeing the bullshit that's going on with Jerry Falwell and all these guys not really having real beliefs, and just kind of, and he wasn't, he was more of a 60s libertarian Christian, if that makes sense. And he kind of gets disgusted with the Reagan White House around like 85, and he leaves. And he's originally from Nashville, and he moves to Nashville. And of course, he's a top Reagan Republican, so he's got all these connections. And
I was just going to say, of course, he's the top.
Yeah, he could be, but he's got a wife, and he ends up being like, he goes and he still is like doing consulting work for all these Republicans, but he's just like, I really want to get to songwriting. And he starts writing songs, and he manages to get songs placed, because you have these song placers in Nashville on like 2 Kenny Rogers records. He becomes very close with Kenny Rogers. Later, he becomes an investor in Kenny Rogers Roasters. And I think he had like one record that, hit number 42, a single, but mostly he got songs on other people on records but they weren't like the single or the lead track. He does okay. He's not doing that.
So
great.
you've shifted your documentary now to him.
So I end up trying to do
Okay.
a documentary on him, which raising money for a documentary is always impossible. And you'll see why I decided to do a documentary on him later, because I love country music. I love crazy Republicans. And then what happens is 9/11 happens. And he doesn't use these phrases, but he kind of has nervous breakdowns every once in a while where he just like, and so he has a nervous breakdown. The Reagan White House, leaves, wants to be a songwriter, moves to Nashville, has a middling career as a songwriter, still is advising Republican presidential candidates. 9/11 happens, and like a lot of people in our country, he freaks out. And he starts deciding he has to like investigate all these religions and why they create all these wars and do all this stuff. And he ends up traveling to the Middle East and deciding to study all these religions. And he's in Jerusalem, and he decides, I want to study Judaism, I want to study Christianity. He wants to study Baha'i, which is not in Jerusalem, but in Haifa. And Baha'is consider themselves a subset of Islam, and that leads him to saying, I have to study Islam too, to understand 9/11. And as he starts to get into it, he starts to get really into it. And he ends up being like, oh, I didn't understand this. There's so many different types of Islam. There's an extreme Wahhabi Islam. There's like the cool Sufi Islam. And he becomes a Sufi, which is like the coolest hippie Islam. He changes his name to Amir al-Islam. He's totally into it. And he eventually, like the person who, his wife leaves him. She's just like, I'm out of here. His daughter, who has come out as a lesbian, is just like, I don't know what's going on with your dad. And he ends up, the person who converted him says, you need to go back to America and bring Sufism to America. So he goes back to Nashville and opens a mosque there. And suddenly, we're in the time of Barack Hussein Obama, and people in Tennessee are not into Muslims at all. And basically, he's getting death threats, and local politicians are like rallying against it. And these are all his friends. So this is when I came in, and I was just like, there is a documentary here. And of course, it never got financed. And he ends up being the imam of this mosque in Nashville. And you know, I don't have a great final twist to it, but because he gets death threats during Trump. This was.
I'm
going to
say
Trump.
this one's a lie just for all the history lessons.
So.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are the comments like, I don't even know what we're talking about anymore, man?
I know. That's why I'm all like, so wait a minute. So who are you doing to talk to? So, okay.
Sorry.
It's it's that's a lot to certainly think about. What are people online saying?
There's political and religious things in there.
I mean, people can be harsh, but one of the kinder things is Marino.
They can go ahead and be harsh. I was thinking the same thing, man.
Marino says both of his stories feel like choose your own adventures. They can just go anywhere. And somebody else said they're going to use this episode when they need a good nap. I don't know what they're referring to. Surely not the story, I'm sure. So.
Well, we go like, is that about him or is it about somebody else? Now,
yeah, that's a little confusing. So what we're gonna do is we're going to have Austin do the recap. But before we do the recap, let me just tell you something about Blue Apron. Well, better than that. Here, let's play this clip. That's for everybody, by the way, that's listening. We're just going to continue because Austin's going to edit that in later. So Austin's going to do real quick the recap, and then we're going to make a vote.
I want to hear your recap of his.
Yeah, whose recap should we do
We'll
first?
start with Jerry, I think, because we did his first.
Did I do the grandpa version of the stories? Is that
no, it's very detailed.
And then...
Your recaps are a little longer, I will say that.
How did you meet grandma? Well, one day I woke up and I decided to have breakfast.
All right, like, we're not writing the screenplay now.
I wish you should have gonged me.
Let's just say we all know that fucking Glove's gonna have a great adventure in your play.
No, we've been cutting stuff. We've been editing all through this.
No, it's fascinating to hear you, like the things that you pitch and the things that you're interested in. It's kind of fascinating to be like, God, like these are the pitches you're giving people in the business. And that they have to sit there and listen, and that what gets something sold? Is it more how crazy the story is, or is it more your passion for what you're seeing and what you're trying to bring to others? What do you think executives are more get more excited about?
Neither. They get excited when you come in with Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
They're like, because if I showed up without Johnny Knoxville and said I'm going to do Criminal Family Tap Dance, they would have been like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, but they were like, oh, Johnny Knoxville thinks this is good. Okay,
Yeah.
So
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Quick recap.
All right, we're starting with Jerry's story. His first story, he was involved in the Second City in Chicago with Tina Fey and Adam McKay and a bunch of other name-drop people, and it was the early days of UCB. They were doing a show at night on Clark Avenue, and Adam had written a sketch called Kill Don Ronstanowski, and they're chanting that.
Rontanowski.
Right, and they're chanting that as Jerry, who, by the way, is the only black improver, parades 50 people into the street.
Yeah.
Across
That was important.
That sounds like a
they
credit.
said it was a detail.
Okay.
He parades all these people into the street across from Wrigley Field. They stop traffic, but there's cops, so Jerry hauls ass, and they chase him into a nightclub where they finally arrest him and take him into jail. Story 2, one night he's here in Los Angeles. It's the early 2000s. He's driving around in a Kia when a cop starts to tail him, so he gets nervous, drives down this cul-de-sac, and sees this police helicopter. They blind him, and a line of cops are there down the road waiting on him. They then hold up Jerry and make him give them belly rubs or something, but then find out his car, a rental, had been stolen. He gets locked up, and they mix things up and hold him on a gun charge, but he gets out.
Yeah. Is that a typical name when you're on the ground like that? That is called the belly rub when you
Or
cops got
belly
you
crawl,
the
yeah.
belly crawl.
Like
Okay.
they make you crawl on your stomach.
Uh-huh.
You can't crawl on your hands. You have to crawl on your stomach too, wherever you're going, which is
Right.
like pretty much impossible.
I'm going to say the first one is a lie, but God, I hate to do that based on the fact that the second one was a little bit of a longer version, had many details, and the first one is so short. So sometimes you make those decisions, oh, the one with all the details is true, but it kind of turns out that sometimes that's not always necessarily so.
I can hear you. I get that, but I think the second one is a lie. I think that happened to somebody else that got pulled over like that. I think this guy's he's no dummy except for when it comes to comedy. You know what I mean? Like he'll do whatever it takes to get the laugh. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the improv being true.
You are. God, it's so difficult. Yeah, and it's true, the hockey and all that. There were a lot of weird details. What do you think, Michael Evans?
That's what Jess just said is changing everything for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think that we give credit often enough to the idea that maybe they're just you've been here for a little while. You're telling your second story. You're gonna tell it different. It might not be so telling of whether it's true or not. I think you're just probably chilling.
And just
out
think
by
about the
then.
shit we do for this.
Yeah, it's true though. Yeah, but I mean that's wild. The cops are coming, and you're just like, nah, man, it's for the bit. It's going to end in pain,
Yeah,
That's so scary.
But I think when you are lying about something, you're so focused on the lie, like trying to cover your ass in case anyone asks it, even in real life, that you would have all those bullshit little details. And that sometimes the truth is something really quick. This happened and then blah, 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 and then that. So,
Yeah.
But I'm going to say the improv thing is a lie because before I completely give an answer, when you were running from the cops into the club, at what point were you like, oh, fuck, this is real now?
When I got inside the club.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when I had a chance to think about, they're going to come in here, they're not leaving. They're not just going to be like,
So what did you do? Did you get down like then and do the belly crawl? Or were you just like...
I was in the club. There was like dancing going on, and I saw them, and I didn't like run anymore.
Yeah.
But they came right up to me and got me.
Were they pissed because they had to run after you? Yeah. Did they beat you up?
It's one of the things they would tell you was like, why? I tell people this all the time. Cops is like, why would you run? Because people run all the time for no reason.
Right.
He's like, you didn't know what we were gonna do. Why would you run? I'm like, well, I was trying to be funny. He's like,
all right. That's a lie. That's a lie. First one's a lie. You just sealed it for yourself. Okay. All right. And you think the second one is
the same? I think the being followed by the police is a lie.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning the same way that police chase or the police chasing with the improv is real. The police chase with the helicopter in the sky seems not so real. Do you know Jerry like from the past or
no?
Because that would be easy to corroborate because that would be something that
because
you
also
definitely
did they
know
ever
about.
turn on their lights to pull you over?
no.
See,
And if you knew UCB back then, how come you weren't in the UCB when they were in New York?
I was.
That's Upright Citizens Brigade.
I was here then. I was in LA by then. By the time they went to New York.
What year was that?
99. Oh, actually, no. When they were doing their show, I was in Second City. So a lot of those guys were in Second City, like affiliated. I had gotten hired into, like me and like Horatio Sands, we got hired into a company there. But Matt Walsh and Matt Besser, Adam had already gone to SNL by the time they went to New York. And he helped them go to New York. But I was doing Second City, so I was hired for something, and they were doing their own show, and they took.
And
a
what
show
brought
from
you
Chicago
to Los Angeles? What project brought you to Los Angeles?
Mr. Show.
Oh, okay. Well, then that kind of makes sense.
I'm with you, Felicia.
Yeah.
I have Jason Marino and Mark Melvin as voting the first story as the lie, and Ken Lofgren going the second story as the lie.
Oh, fuck, I'm changing it. The second story is the lie.
No, don't.
Yes, I'm changing it. I'm
You're going
changing
with
it.
Ken? You're going with Ken?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Ken. It's because he gave the timeline, and I remember because my ex-husband used to manage a UCB back in the day, and I remember seeing Horatio Sands. I didn't remember ever meeting you, but that makes sense because Mr. Show was going on. That's what kind of changed my story. Is that timeline does make sense to me, so I'm gonna say the second story is the lie.
Oh, way to jump on my train.
Yeah, there you go.
Michael, real quick, what was your vote?
Second story's true, baby. I'm sticking with it.
You are. Oh,
The
okay.
only thing that seems like a lie about this, how did any of this happen in 99 if you're like 23 now? I'm looking at you like, no fucking way.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, what the fucking white people say.
That's really nice.
I'm just saying everything but black don't crack. I mean, like, right? Jesus, look at the guy.
Well,
really nice.
I don't know how to answer that and remain not racist. Anyways.
That's not, no, those are compliments.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
all
a
right.
pretty nice compliment.
All right. So which story is the lie?
The first story's a lie.
Oh! You should have stayed. I told you. God damn it.
And it's just what you said, it happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I barely know the details. It happened to Horatio. I've seen the
It happened to her.
I wasn't
That
even
totally
living in
makes
Chicago
sense.
then.
Oh
It
my
happened to him.
God.
And all I know is the kill Dan Aronofsky part and the cops. That's
Yes.
all I know. All the rest of
it
it,
was so close.
all the
It
rest
was
of it I
so
made up.
close.
I was almost swayed because A13 VJ online said, as a brown black person, I can say we never run, and I should have taken that as a
I
lie.
know.
Yeah.
Well, no, you run if you did something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But no, people run all the time. I have had cops that tell me that people run all the time, and they're just so pissed off. People run when they haven't committed a
You
crime.
haven't done
Yeah,
anything.
don't. Yeah. Oh, I should have listened to
Shit.
myself. Jesus. All right, the recap for Julian's story. He seems thrilled.
All right, Julian's first story. His first documentary was about an East Texas Ku Klux Klanman with a black girlfriend, and he got approached by a big network to do a reality show on him, but the guy goes missing. So they find this other Aryan brother, Steve, in prison, who eventually serves as his own lawyer and overturns his own sentence. Then he goes to a small park in Oklahoma, falls in love with this black woman. Then he meets his cousin, Mad Dog, to do an interview with Julien, who subsequently was trying to murder Julien on the suspicion of working for the feds. They were kind enough to smoke out old MD, though, to prove their outlaw nature, but wind up getting him too wrecked and telling him that he's Jewish, and ends up then the interview kind of switches to where Mad Dog is the interviewer, and Julien joined the Aryan Brotherhood that night, and they've been happy ever since. Story 2, he lived in West Virginia and worked for PBS on a documentary.
That one you got to do real quick.
He worked for PBS on a documentary about alien space radio preachers to take over that were going to take over. They end up researching this guy named Carl Hess, who wrote speeches for Barry Goldwater, but started to become a libertarian motorcycle rider in the 60s. So he gets into the White House and writes an ad and a song for Ronald Reagan. Then becomes close with Kenny Rogers and his roasted chickens, but 9/11 happens and there's different types of Islams. So the guy changes his name and opens a mosque in Nashville. And he did a documentary on him.
Right. Wow. You must be like a prisoner of your own brain or something like that. That's like such a complicated couple of stories. Like, it's just like.
Well, I listened to some episodes. I was like, I don't want to be the guy who tells the story. Like, I shit in my pants.
I know.
God.
I know, because.
We never had 9/11 mentioned in 4 stories, though. Every story, to give us a time frame, 9/11 was...
I was like, I'm not going to give them a shit in the pants story. I know they don't want another shit in the pants
You know,
story.
it's so funny as I was sending you the email last night about, tell 2 stories and here's the link if you want to go. And then there's this part of me is like, but you don't have to tell a shit in your pants story because there's so many people that tell a shit in your pants story.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put that in the email, but you did pick up on that.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta give them something better and like remember stuff in my life that's yeah.
Okay. No, fair enough. So, Jerry, do you know which story is a lie or the truth?
I mean, I didn't know beforehand. I can guess, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah. If you don't know and you want to play along and ask questions, please
Sure.
do. Michael, just off the top of your head, which one do you think is a lie?
I guess the second one is, to me, the lie because there's a ton of detail, and that I know I was just saying that shouldn't always be telling, but it's like I don't. I think I like the first story a lot.
You know, when you research a documentary, you got to find all the details, or else, like, because it's like you have to be able to answer questions in meetings. They're like,
yeah,
what?
You know what? But I don't know why I say. Why do I say that there's a lot of details that make it untrue? It's like the reason I voted with Jerry's second story being true is because the details felt rattled off so naturally, although complicated. You know what I mean? It's like maybe you remember it so well because it's true. The second story is a lot for me. I identified with the first one because it's short and there's weed.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it's a difficult one because the first story made a lot of sense of, how the documentary kind of came together, and about, even though it didn't really get picked up, about the Aryan Brotherhood guy and the black chick girlfriend. But then the second story is so all over the place, and I did elongate it by asking you to explain who Barry Goldwater was.
Yeah, and I still don't remember.
Yeah.
It's Gary Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater. I was gonna have you explain libertarian, but I didn't want everyone to stop playing the game.
Yeah, they would.
I have a really shitty memory, so like people
No,
are like,
no, we must be zombies if you got a shitty memory.
no, seriously, like people are like, what did you do on Saturday? I'm like, I have no idea, and I have to ask my girlfriend. But
Short-term memory. Then.
yeah,
Short term.
no, but I last night went through my notes on everything because I was like, fuck. I was like, because I knew if
On both stories or just one?
on both stories. Because if I came in here, I was just like, yeah, there was this dude, and what was his name again? Because I couldn't remember anyone's names in a bunch of my stories. I was like, fuck. And then I was like, oh God, when you go pitch stuff, you have to have notes. And I was like, oh, I forgot. I forgot this, And then I have all these great details, but that would have been another hour of the show.
So what is your guess, since you don't know which story is the truth, Jerry? What is your guess, knowing, Julien, you guys have been working so hard together on this newest project, what is your guess? Which one is a lie?
I think the first one is a lie.
And why is that?
I really don't have anything. The second one had more detail. I'm just going by the way he talks, and I could be completely wrong.
Okay.
In that the second story was kind of all over the place.
It was kind of all over the place, even though I diverted him by asking about explaining Barry Goldwater. But the second one was kind of all over the place, where it's like, God, that seems so convoluted.
That's what makes me think it's the truth.
Uh-huh.
Because it's like, oh, there's this fact and this fact, and the other one is like a story. I know the beginning, I know the end, and that's.
Oh, and it tied up so easily at the end. The first
Got
story.
a nice little button.
People go narratives if they're telling the lie.
That's very
to tell
true.
the story.
Yeah, the first story had that nice little circular button at the end where it's like, and then blah blah, we're friends on Facebook, and then the second story is like.
What year was the Muslim guy supposed to be?
What year was he supposed to be? Are you speaking English?
That's how we talk around here now.
That's the only thing she took from that fucking story, by the way.
He was
Don't make him
62.
feel bad.
Year 62 he was in.
What year was this that you were trying to sell the documentary?
It was, I just remember Obama was president. So it was, what do we?
2008.
Okay.
So 10 years ago? No. It would have been.
First time or second time?
Would have been the second year of his presidency, which would have been 2. I have no sense of time, so I think that's 10 years ago, right?
2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You did math.
Yeah. I'm
20,
also going to say the second story is a lie. What about you, Austin?
I'm kind of thinking that the first story is true for Julien over there, just because knowing the documentary that he did on the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia, it seems very plausible that he would also do a documentary on a Aryan Brotherhood member who has a black girlfriend. It's all in the same.
I also was a producer on Mike Judge Presents Tales from the Tour Bus.
White trash wheelhouse. See, that's what I'm saying.
So that was all stories of country music.
By the way, I love that.
But are you're heavy into politics too?
I'm into politics. I'm into country music. I'm into finding out about crazy racists and exposing them. I'm into Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So I'm into a lot of stuff.
Actually, I'm changing my vote. I'm going to vote with Jerry saying the first story is the lie because it's too. Is that what you're saying? That it's too
well-formed.
Well-formed and has that nice little button at the end. Michael?
I'm going first story true, second story lie.
Oh, you?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Michael because I just relate more with the first one.
And it looks like Jason let me see. Jason Marino's going first true. Mark Melvin going first lie. Ken Lofgren also going first true.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sticking with Jerry because I'm sticking with Jerry. So
Is usually the first. Is there like a? Have you done like a pattern like analysis of first?
We haven't done any
second, true?
analysis
We-
yet.
as you can see, we don't analyze
We
shit.
ain't the analysis in time.
Like you don't have people in Vegas like betting on which one is true, which isn't. They've like broken like the pattern.
Austin does write everything down, and we
We
do
have a
wanna
plan
go,
to eventually go back and see who the best liar
analyze.
was, who tricked the most, but it's going to be a lot of work, and we're unpaid around here, so.
So, which story is the lie?
The one about the Nashville songwriter who worked for radio.
God, I suck
just
at my
kept
own
throwing-
game.
He just kept throwing in those facts, dude. Like he's just reading out of a book.
And none of that was white trash enough. None of it was white trash enough for him to actually be a part of it, I don't think. So.
No, I try to make stuff that's not white trash. They just don't let me
They don't
make
let
it.
you. I'm glad.
Wow.
They're like,
Jessica.
Yeah.
I don't know shit of what you're talking about, but no.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I couldn't figure out if you add more details if it seems realer or faker. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you
Good
go.
job.
So
Yeah.
you did analyze it.
Yeah. Now I know I can't trust this guy.
I know. Wow, you guys have been such great participants, and by the way, thank you for everyone that constantly plays along, and we appreciate that you do that. And you guys were awesome. What can people go look up for you? I know for the Love of the Glove, but if you want to give any more information out about that,
Social media or anything.
social media or anything like that.
We've actually got people online asking where to find Wild and Wonderful Whites, too. If you
Yeah,
could,
please
let
give us
you know.
information like
it
that.
just got re-released 10th anniversary on Amazon, so you can rent it on Amazon, and
Nice.
and I've had Durkee from the Wild and Wonderful Whites commenting on our musical on Facebook and writing really disturbing, offensive stuff. Yeah. He's known. A lot of people know Durkee as the guy who shakes
Oh, yeah.
shakes a
The
pill
mating
bottle.
call.
The Boone County mating call. Yeah. So.
And by the way, how long is the first run going to go from the 25th till?
We have a 6-week run, 2-week extension, and then if it's selling a lot of tickets, then we have to see if Jerry will keep running.
So I know we've picked on you a lot. Can we come?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you got a car?
I do.
Yeah.
Now. I got a car. I got a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
You got shoes?
Well, you could,
Yeah.
we're on 2 bus lines and there's a parking lot.
There you go. And Jerry, what about you?
Oh, I'll be doing that show.
And where can people follow you on social media?
I don't like it, but they can follow me on Instagram. I was telling her I just dropped Twitter. It was the hardest thing for me to do, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even like post on this thing, and just because of how hard it was to do, I'm like, I should get rid of this.
But we do think all of you should go and follow the Jerry Minor that we tweeted out and tagged
Yeah.
earlier.
Jerry
follow
Minor
that dude.
17. Our apologies.
Yeah, follow that dude. Give him all your problems.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And I can't tell you how amazing Jerry is in the show.
That's what my friend Betsy, who's producing or helping to produce the show, said that it's that you're amazing in it.
Oh,
so
that's
yeah,
really nice.
Yeah,
I
Give me
a hard
definitely,
time
we
so
definitely are going to come and see it.
Yeah, everyone's like, I know Jerry is a comedian, but they don't know like what a great singer he is, and he's slaying these songs. So it's like,
Oh, great! Did you know that Wayne Brady also sings?
Oh yeah, no, he should.
Yeah.
He should be doing
Why'd you
this.
bring
show,
that up?
actually.
Because I had to photograph him singing a couple of months ago.
well, Eric, who plays Michael Jackson, Eric B. Anthony, was Wayne Brady's understudy recently in a Sondheim musical. So
Oh, really?
they're good friends. And then our choreographer, Chris Judd, who was Michael Jackson's lead backup dancer for years, grew up with Wayne Brady. So,
Oh, really?
So Wayne Brady will be
wow.
at the show. So,
Oh,
yeah,
wonderful,
yeah.
wonderful. By the way, he can sing. So,
Me too.
yeah, there you go. But we don't want to talk about that. What about you? What do you got shaking?
I'm at the Austin Walker on everything. Follow me on there and come and see us here at the Belly Room of the World Famous Comedy Store, January 31st. All kinds of big names coming in. Remind me who I didn't write it down. It's
Lori Kilmartin.
Lori Kilmartin
That's all I
and
can remember
some
right now.
surprise
Zach
guests. I
Noe
think
Towers,
we have.
very funny guy.
And our crew, of course, will be there.
Yeah.
So that's all the reason you need to show up. Kia, we're looking at you.
Yeah, and February 14th we'll be at the Ice House at 10:30. It got changed to 10:30. And Michael, what about you? Where can people find you?
Follow my Instagram, High Five Michael. I just posted some stand-up dates, and I just posted a clip from the last Liars Club live show at the Ice House too.
Nice.
So
And if anybody has a spare cell phone lying around that they could donate to
yeah,
our transgender friend in there, that would be.
You know, I've told that story on the podcast too, where they asked me for directions and I got robbed, and
Oh,
then that
really?
just happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last
I
night
felt
my
bad.
phone got straight taken out of my hand.
I heard you saying I did just snatch it and ran.
Reached out, they pulled up on me, asked me for directions real quick, and I was familiar with where they're going, so I'm describing it. I couldn't remember if it was a left or a right at one point, so I was like, let me just GPS. I had the line up, and I mean, I'm 2-3 feet away, you had to lunge out, but just snatched under my hand and floored it.
They were in the car.
Yeah, they were in a car. I was on
What is more of a butt hurt? The fact that you look like a mark and people said there's a mark right there, or that the inconvenience of, or
That's my vote right there.
the inconvenience of not having a phone. What hurts your butt more on that?
I don't know. I guess this whole episode here is the butt hurt now.
Okay.
No, I don't know. It's not as miserable full time. It's not. I'm not constantly dying to check my phone like you think it might go down.
Yeah.
But it's just annoying that I didn't know how long it was going to take to get here today. You'd like the GPS at first.
Right,
And,
right.
Yeah, I don't know. Shit like that.
All the
Yeah.
criminals
Good.
watching
I'm
this
pissed, but I'm
podcast
good.
are going to be
Yeah.
lined up waiting for Michael to get out of here now.
I'm so sorry that happened to
gotta
you,
get another
Michael. That
phone
just
now.
had to suck, so I'm so sorry. You can
Thank
follow
you.
me at Felicia Michaels all across the board. And do us a big favor, follow us on YouTube. Understand if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes or any other kind of audio service where you get podcasts, that we do stream live once again here at the Comedy Store on Mondays at 4:30 and on Fridays, most Fridays at 8:30. Jessica?
Yeah, follow me at Jess Wellington too, and you have been lied to.
Oh, by the way, go see Jessica.
Fuck you!
No. Go see Jessica on Gracie and Frank.
Oh yeah, I'm on
yeah.
Grace and Frankie on on Netflix.
Yeah, go
Oh,
see
cool.
her on
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah. All right, you guys.